Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes life does not ask us whether we are ready before it throws us into storms. It simply pushes us, breaks us, and then quietly waits to see what we will do next. In those moments, we often think we need power, fame, or resources to make an impact. But the truth is far simpler. You need only one thing: the courage to show up, exactly as you are. Impact is not created when you stand on a stage. It is created when you rise after falling. It is created when you choose kindness in a world that forgot how to feel. It is created when you decide that your pain will not silence you but shape you. Every scar you carry tells a story, and someone out there needs that story to breathe again. Your authenticity is your greatest strength, because nothing in this world carries more power than a person who is fully connected to who they truly are. When you choose to show up as yourself without pretending, without wearing masks, without editing your existence to fit someone else's expectations, you create a kind of presence that people cannot ignore. Authenticity is not about being perfect. It is about being real, and real always speaks louder than perfect. Real stories, real emotions, real struggles, and real victories touch the human heart in ways rehearsed words never can. When you stand in your truth, people feel it, because truth has a sound, a weight, a warmth that manufactured personalities can never produce. And the journey toward authenticity is not easy. It demands courage, because being yourself means accepting that not everyone will understand you, not everyone will applaud you, and not everyone will stay. But the ones who do stay, stay for who you truly are, and that is the kind of connection that builds impact, respect, and long-term influence. Inside every person, there is a quiet voice that knows exactly who they are meant to be, but that voice often gets buried under noise, pressure, comparison, and the fear of judgment. When you choose authenticity, you allow that inner voice to rise again, to guide you, to shape your choices, to refine your path. You stop trying to perform and start trying to live. You stop trying to impress and start trying to express. You stop chasing approval and start chasing purpose, and that shift changes everything. It makes your actions clearer, your decisions stronger, your mindset more stable. When you act from a place of truth, you do not waste energy pretending, and you do not drain yourself trying to fit into boxes that were never meant for you. You move with a kind of confidence that comes from alignment, not arrogance, a confidence built on understanding yourself deeply and respecting your own journey, even the messy parts. Authenticity also creates impact because people trust what feels genuine. In a world where people hide their struggles, hide their insecurities, hide their real thoughts just to look strong, just to look successful, just to look perfect, your honesty becomes refreshing. It becomes a breath of air in a suffocating environment. When you admit you have failed, people feel safe to try. When you admit you have been hurt, people feel safe to heal. When you admit you have doubted yourself but still kept going, people feel safe to believe in themselves again. You become a quiet source of courage for others, not by showing them how flawless you are, but by showing them how human you are. And humanity connects far deeper than perfection ever will. Your authenticity also protects your mental strength. When you suppress who you are, you constantly fight with yourself, trying to maintain a version of you that doesn't fit. But when you accept yourself, you become lighter, calmer, more centered. You stop fearing exposure because you have nothing to hide. You stop fearing loss because you know anything that leaves did not belong to your truth. And you stop fearing opinions because you understand that your worth is not defined by how others view you, but by how you view yourself. With authenticity, you stop living on the surface and start living from the core. And life lived from the core is powerful, steady, meaningful. Being authentic also unlocks creativity because your mind is no longer trapped in imitation. You start thinking differently, seeing differently, creating differently. You let your individuality shape your work, your choices, your relationships. You start building a life that matches your inner world instead of copying someone else's outer image. And when your inner and outer worlds align, you walk with a sense of freedom that cannot be faked, a freedom that quietly tells the world who you are without needing to speak. Impact begins with small, daily actions, because the truth is that transformation rarely happens through huge, dramatic moments. It happens quietly, slowly, consistently, through the choices you make every single day. People often wait for the perfect opportunity, the perfect timing, the perfect platform, thinking that only big gestures create real change, but the reality is much simpler. The world is shaped by ordinary people, doing ordinary things with extraordinary intention. A kind word, a moment of patience, a small act of courage, a decision to show up even when you don't feel ready. These tiny steps may not look like much, but they build a foundation strong enough to shift lives, including your own. When you choose good habits over comfort, discipline over distraction, honesty over silence, and effort over excuses, you create a silent force that begins to shape your character and the way people experience you. Every great achievement you admire today started with someone taking the smallest first step, often without knowing where it would lead. Small actions carry power because they are repeated, and repetition creates growth. When you choose to improve even 1% every day, you might not notice the change immediately, but the impact accumulates. You become more focused, more confident, more capable. Small actions teach you discipline, they teach you persistence, they teach you how to keep going even when motivation fades. And the beautiful thing is that anyone can start small. You don't need resources, you don't need fame, you don't need an audience. You only need the willingness to act, even if the action feels insignificant today. Tiny choices shape your relationships as well. When you take a moment to listen, when you choose to respond instead of reacting, when you offer understanding instead of judgment, you change the emotional environment around you. People feel safer, softer, more open. Your presence becomes a source of comfort rather than pressure. Even small shifts in how you communicate can make a huge difference, saying thank you, apologizing when needed, appreciating someone's effort, or choosing kindness when you could choose anger. These micro moments may seem small to you, but for someone else they can change the direction of an entire day. The same applies to your mindset. A single decision to think differently, to challenge a limiting belief, to interrupt a negative thought can start a chain reaction inside you. Replacing self-doubt with even a tiny amount of self-trust begins to rewrite the way you see yourself. Choosing to try one more time, choosing to learn one new thing, choosing to take one small step forward even on your worst days. These are the actions that shape resilience. Your strength does not grow from giant leaps. It grows from showing up again and again in the tiny moments when no one is watching. Even your dreams depend on small, daily steps. Creativity grows when you work a little every day. Skills develop when you practice consistently instead of waiting for inspiration. Opportunities appear when you prepare quietly, long before anyone notices. The small decisions you make in private build the public results people later admire. And because these actions are small, they are sustainable. You can commit to them. You can maintain them. You can build a lifestyle around them without burning out. Impact becomes a natural part of who you are, not a performance you occasionally attempt. Small actions matter because they create momentum. Momentum creates belief. Belief creates transformation. And transformation creates impact. When you understand this, you stop underestimating the power of your everyday choices. You begin to respect the quiet work, the early mornings, the small improvements, the tiny acts of kindness, the disciplined routines. You begin to see that every small action is like a seed you plant, and even though you cannot see the roots forming underground, growth is happening. Your small actions are shaping your character, your future, and the world around you in ways far deeper than you realize. Your scars are signs of strength, not weakness, because each mark carries a story of survival, a story of endurance, a story that proves you faced something that tried to break you and you made it through. People often hide their scars because they fear judgment, they fear questions, they fear being seen as fragile, but scars are not symbols of fragility. They are evidence that you did not give up. They remind you that even the moments that hurt you the most could not take away your ability to rise again. Scars are chapters of your journey that shaped your wisdom, deepened your understanding, and softened your heart in ways comfort never could. They teach you what strength really means, not the loud, forceful strength that people pretend to have, but the quiet strength of someone who has lived through storms and still chooses to move forward. When you look at your scars, you may remember pain, but you should also remember the resilience that carried you through that pain. Every emotional scar, every disappointment, every heartbreak, every failure, every moment that left you feeling lost has contributed to the person you have become. Strength does not grow in perfect conditions. It grows in challenges that push you, stretch you, and demand that you become more than you thought you could be. Sometimes life leaves you with wounds you didn't deserve, experiences you never asked for, and losses you were not prepared for, but those same experiences plant seeds of courage inside you. They remind you that you are capable of bearing more than you imagined, and that surviving something difficult changes the way you see yourself forever. People try to erase their scars because the world teaches us to celebrate victories but hide the battles. But the battles are where the real lessons come from. Your scars hold those lessons. They show that healing is possible, that growth is possible, that rebuilding is possible even when you thought it wasn't. They teach you empathy, because when you've seen darkness, you recognize it in others. You know how to comfort, how to understand, how to connect, not from theory, but from experience. This kind of understanding cannot be learned from books or speeches. It comes from living through situations that forced you to confront your fears, to sit with your pain, and to find a way back to yourself. Your scars also remind you that vulnerability is not a flaw. Being vulnerable means you were brave enough to feel deeply. It means you cared, you tried, you loved, you risked something, and those experiences, regardless of their outcomes, shaped your depth. They expanded your emotional world. They taught you how to rebuild your confidence, how to trust yourself again, how to rely on your inner strength. Vulnerability makes you relatable, it makes you human. When you share your journey, even in small, unspoken ways, you allow others to see that they are not alone. You show them that pain can be survived, that healing is real, and that scars are part of becoming whole, not proof that you are broken. Your scars become a map of where you've been and how far you've come. They remind you of the moments you thought were endings, but were actually beginnings. They show you the contrast between who you were and who you are now, and with time you begin to understand that your scars do not limit you, they guide you. They help you make wiser choices, they make you more grounded, they help you recognize red flags, they teach you boundaries, and they give you a deeper appreciation for peace when you finally find it. They shift your perspective from asking, "Why did this happen to me?" to understanding, "This shaped me into someone stronger." Scars do not reduce your value, they add to it. They add depth to your voice, conviction to your decisions, courage to your steps, and compassion to your heart. They are proof that life challenged you, and you answered with strength. Kindness changes more than you can imagine, because even the smallest gentle gesture has a way of reaching places that words cannot. People carry invisible burdens, silent fears, and hidden struggles that they rarely express, and sometimes the kindness you offer becomes the moment of relief they have been silently praying for. You may never know what someone is fighting with when you meet them. You may never know what kept them awake the night before, but your tone, your patience, your empathy can soften something inside. Kindness is not just about being polite, it is about being present, being considerate, being willing to understand before judging, being willing to pause before reacting. These simple acts create ripples that move far beyond the moment in which they happen. When you choose kindness, you shift the energy of every room you enter. Conflict becomes lighter, conversations become easier, and people feel safer around you. Kindness is not weakness, it is control. It shows that you can regulate your emotions, that you can respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively, that you can hold your ground without harming others. It takes strength to stay calm when you feel frustrated, to speak gently when you are stressed, to be patient when someone is slow, to be compassionate when your own life feels heavy. And every time you choose kindness despite difficult emotions, you are training your inner strength. You are teaching your heart to lead instead of your ego. Kindness builds trust, and trust builds relationships. People remember how you made them feel long after they forget your words. A supportive gesture during someone's vulnerable moment can bind hearts in ways long speeches cannot. When you listen without interrupting, when you acknowledge someone's feelings, when you appreciate their effort, you create emotional safety. In a world full of distractions and judgments, emotional safety is rare, and that rarity makes kindness powerful. It becomes a place where people feel seen, heard, valued. It becomes a bridge that connects you to others on a deeper level, allowing real communication, real comfort, and real understanding to flow. Kindness also changes you from within. Every time you choose to be gentle, your heart becomes lighter. Every time you forgive instead of holding on to resentment, you open space for peace. Every time you help someone without expecting anything in return, you strengthen your sense of purpose. The emotional reward of kindness is one of the purest forms of happiness. It teaches you to look beyond yourself, to see the world with softer eyes, to appreciate the humanity in others. And the more you practice kindness, the more you realize that compassion is not something you give to others, it is something you give to yourself as well. It makes you calmer, more grounded, more emotionally intelligent. Even the smallest act of kindness can create change that you may never witness. A simple message can comfort someone who felt alone. A respectful response can diffuse someone's anger. A patient conversation can prevent someone from giving up. These moments might seem small, but they often become turning points in someone's day, someone's mindset, or even someone's life. Kindness spreads silently and invisibly. One gentle action inspires another, creating a chain reaction that touches people you may never meet. The impact travels quietly from one heart to another, creating warmth in places you will never see. Choosing kindness does not mean you ignore your boundaries or allow others to walk over you. It means you stand firm with grace. You communicate clearly without cruelty. You distance yourself respectfully when needed. You maintain self-respect while still maintaining respect for others. Kindness has nothing to do with being naive. It has everything to do with being aware of your power and using it wisely. Kindness is a form of leadership. It elevates your character and shapes how people view you. It creates loyalty, respect, and goodwill. It makes you someone others trust, someone they can rely on, someone who brings comfort rather than chaos. And the world becomes a little softer every time you choose it, because kindness does not end with you. It continues through everyone you touch, creating waves of change that grow far beyond what your eyes can see. Rising after failure creates real inspiration, because the world is filled with people who succeed, but not everyone has the courage to stand up when everything seems lost. Failure is something we are taught to fear, to avoid, to hide. But in reality, failure is often the moment that shapes us the most. It strips away illusion, it exposes truth, it forces you to look at your life honestly. When you fall, you learn things about yourself that success could never teach you. You learn where your strength lies, where your weaknesses hide, and where your resilience begins. When people see you rise again after hitting the ground, it touches them deeply because rising requires a kind of inner strength that cannot be faked. It comes from real struggle, real pain, real courage. Every time you get up after falling, you are rewriting the meaning of failure. You begin to understand that falling is not the opposite of success, it is a part of it. No one reaches any meaningful destination without stumbling along the way. Those who rise show the world that setbacks are temporary, and that the human spirit is capable of transformation even after the hardest breakdowns. Your story becomes proof that the impossible can be made possible, not because things got easier, but because you grew stronger. And when you rise, people see themselves in your journey. They see their own fears, their own mistakes, their own disappointments reflected back at them. Your rise gives them hope that they can rise too. Failure forces you to slow down and look carefully at what you were doing and why you were doing it. It teaches you to set better boundaries, to plan more wisely, to build stronger habits. It teaches you humility, the kind that strengthens your character without damaging your confidence. When you fall, you learn what truly matters and what was only noise. You learn who supports you and who disappears. You learn how to rebuild with intention and not impulse. Every failure pushes you to grow, sometimes painfully, but always profoundly. These lessons become part of your strength, part of the wisdom you carry into your next chapter. Rising after failure also builds credibility. People do not admire those who never struggled. They admire those who struggled and still moved forward. Anyone can keep going when life is smooth, but moving forward when life is crushing you requires a rare kind of determination. It shows that you are not driven by comfort but by purpose. It shows that you are not controlled by fear but by faith in your ability to learn, adapt, and rise. It shows that you value growth more than the appearance of perfection. This kind of resilience builds respect because people recognize the depth inside you. Every rise after failure changes your internal world too. It strengthens your identity because now you know that nothing can take away your ability to begin again. You develop a quiet confidence that comes from experiences, not from ego. You stop fearing mistakes because you have seen firsthand that you can survive them. You stop fearing judgment because you know your story is bigger than a single chapter. You stop fearing the unknown because you have already walked through uncertainty and found your way back. Rising gives you emotional power, the kind that cannot be taken away by circumstances. And the most powerful part is that your rise becomes someone else's survival guide. Your courage becomes someone else's reassurance. Your persistence becomes someone else's reminder that hope is worth holding on to. When people watch someone rise from something that could have destroyed them, it awakens something inside them. It reminds them that they too can rewrite their story. They too can take control of their life again. They too can make a comeback even after losing everything they once depended on. Rising after failure creates inspiration because it is the rawest and most honest proof of human resilience. Your story has the power to heal others because every experience you have lived through carries a lesson, a message, a quiet truth that someone else desperately needs to hear. People often believe their story is too ordinary, too messy, too painful, or too imperfect to matter. But what they don't realize is that the most powerful stories are not the polished ones. They are the real ones, the ones filled with struggle, doubt, mistakes, confusion, and growth. When you speak from that place of honesty, it connects with the human heart in a way that scripted perfection never can. Someone out there is going through something that feels overwhelming, something that makes them feel isolated. And your story might be the bridge that makes them feel understood. It might be the moment they realize they are not alone. When you share your story, even the parts you once tried to hide, you create a space where others can see their own reflection. Your pain becomes a language they understand, your healing becomes hope they can hold on to, your journey becomes proof that survival is possible. People often heal not from advice, but from resonance. They heal when they hear someone say, "I went through this too, and I made it out." Your vulnerability becomes their strength. Your courage becomes their comfort. Your honesty becomes their guide, and healing begins to flow from one heart to another without needing any grand gestures. Your story also carries medicine because it holds the lessons you learned the hard way. Every mistake you made taught you something. Every challenge you faced shaped you. Every heartbreak deepened your understanding. These lessons can prevent someone else from breaking in the same places. They can give clarity to someone standing in confusion. They can give direction to someone who feels lost. You might think you are simply sharing a memory, but for someone listening, it might be the moment that changes the course of their life. The story of your struggles also teaches others that strength does not mean avoiding pain. It means moving through it. It shows them that healing is not a straight line, that progress can be slow, and that it is okay to fall apart before coming back together. When people hear your truth, they feel less ashamed of their own. They realize that healing does not require perfection. It requires honesty, patience, and courage. Your story becomes a light that guides them out of their darkest moments, not by telling them what to do, but by showing them what is possible. Sometimes the parts of your story you feel most insecure about are the exact parts someone else needs. Your moments of weakness can strengthen someone else. Your moments of confusion can give clarity to someone in the same storm. Your moments of rebuilding can inspire someone who feels like giving up. When you speak from your lived experience, you speak with a depth that cannot be manufactured. People don't just hear your words, they feel them. They feel the truth behind them. They feel the emotion inside them. They feel the journey that shaped them. Sharing your story also heals you. When you put your experiences into words, you make sense of them. You release the weight that you carried alone for too long. You transform pain into purpose, wounds into wisdom, and memories into meaning. The more you share, the lighter you become. Your story stops being something that happened to you and becomes something that shaped you. And in sharing it, you turn your survival into strength not only for yourself, but for everyone who hears it. Your story has the power to heal because stories are how humans connect, understand, grow, and remember that hope always exists, even when life feels heavy. True impact comes from courage, not perfection, because the world does not need flawless people. It needs brave people. Perfection is a mask, a carefully crafted image that hides the real human behind it. Courage, on the other hand, is raw, honest, unfiltered, and deeply powerful. It is the willingness to take a step, even when you are unsure, to speak even when your voice shakes, to try even when you fear failure. People connect with courage because it reflects something real. It shows vulnerability, it shows authenticity, it shows the strength of a person who refuses to let fear decide their future. When you lead with courage instead of waiting to be perfect, you create impact that touches hearts, inspires action, and encourages others to rise. Perfection tells you to wait. Wait until you are smarter, stronger, richer, more skilled, more confident. It teaches you to hold back, to question yourself, to delay your dreams. But courage teaches you to begin where you are, with what you have, even if it doesn't feel enough. Perfection freezes growth. Courage creates movement. When you choose courage, you start taking steps that slowly build your confidence. You gain experience, you learn, you adjust, you evolve. Real progress comes from trying, not from waiting for conditions to be flawless. The world has never been changed by someone who stayed silent, stayed hidden, or stayed stuck in the prison of trying to look perfect. Courage also builds impact because it breaks barriers inside you. Every time you challenge your fears, they lose their power. Every time you step into discomfort, your comfort zone expands. Every time you choose courage, you become a stronger, braver, clearer version of yourself. This internal transformation influences your external world. Your decisions become bolder, Your communication becomes clearer. Your goals become sharper. People around you begin to feel your energy, your certainty, your commitment. Courage has a magnetic quality. It makes others want to follow, want to grow, want to believe in themselves the way you believed in yourself. Perfection demands approval from others. Courage demands approval from yourself. When you choose courage, you no longer rely on validation. You move from your own conviction. You stop trying to impress and start trying to express. You stop trying to meet expectations and start trying to fulfill purpose. This shift brings freedom. It removes pressure. It allows creativity, clarity, and authenticity to flow. People are naturally drawn to those who operate from purpose rather than performance. They trust them more because courage is honest and perfection is forced. Courage also builds impact because it shows resilience. When you act with courage, you accept that failure might happen, but you do it anyway. And when people see you rise after setbacks, they see a real human being who refuses to give up. This kind of resilience inspires more than any polished success story ever could. It shows that mistakes do not define you, fear does not control you, and obstacles do not stop you. It shows that greatness comes from endurance, not flawlessness. The courage to continue, especially when things go wrong, is what makes your impact memorable and meaningful. Even small acts of courage create powerful effects. Speaking the truth when it's uncomfortable, setting boundaries when it's difficult, choosing growth when it's safer to stay the same, chasing goals when doubt surrounds you. These simple moments build your identity. They become part of your story. They become part of the energy you carry into every space. And people can feel that energy. They feel the difference between someone who pretends to be perfect and someone who dares to be real. Your courage encourages others. When people see you stepping forward despite uncertainty, they begin to believe that they can do it too. When they see you choosing authenticity, they feel permission to be themselves. When they see you embracing imperfections, they stop hiding their own. Courage spreads, it creates movement, it awakens something powerful inside others. And this chain reaction is what creates real impact. An impact that begins with one brave decision and continues through every life it touches. The world needs the real, honest version of you, because authenticity creates a connection that nothing else can replace. In a world where so many people hide behind filters, masks, expectations, and social pressure, being real becomes rare, and rare things have value. When you allow yourself to show up as you are, with your imperfect thoughts, your evolving dreams, your mistakes, your strengths, and your vulnerabilities, you give people something they can trust. Realness has a texture, a depth, a sincerity that people feel instantly. It tells them they are not alone in their struggles. It tells them that it is okay to be human. It tells them that connection doesn't require perfection, it requires honesty. People are drawn to authenticity because it gives them permission to breathe. When someone meets a person who is genuinely themselves, it breaks the tension around comparison and competition. Instead of trying to measure up, they begin to relax. Instead of pretending, they begin to open up. Your honesty becomes a mirror that reminds them that they too are allowed to be themselves, and this kind of environment is healing. It creates comfort. It builds meaningful relationships that are not based on performance but on truth. The world doesn't need more perfect personalities. It needs more real humans who dare to show their emotions, admit their flaws, share their stories, and embrace their journey. Showing the real you also means showing your growth. People don't connect with a finished product. They connect with someone who is still becoming. They connect with your effort, not your image. When you share your process, the confusion, the progress, the setbacks, the learning, they see a reflection of their own path. It reminds them that growth is messy, uncomfortable, and nonlinear, and that this is completely normal. Your authenticity normalizes imperfection. It breaks the illusion that everyone else has figured it out. It allows others to stop pretending they have everything under control and start embracing their own humanity. The real version of you also builds trust. When you are honest about your feelings, your boundaries, your hopes, and your limits, you give others a clear picture of who you are. This clarity helps them feel safe with you. They know what to expect, they know where they stand, they don't have to guess your intentions or decode your behavior. Trust grows naturally in the presence of honesty, and trust is the foundation of every meaningful connection, whether in friendship, family, leadership, or love. Your authenticity also carries a kind of courage. It takes strength to reveal the parts of yourself that you fear others may not understand. It takes bravery to show your real character in a world that often rewards imitation. But every time you choose to be yourself, you break another layer of insecurity. You become more grounded, more confident, more self-aware, and this inner strength changes the way you speak, act, and show up. People begin to feel the depth in your presence, they feel the conviction in your words, they feel the purity of your intentions. Authenticity becomes your power. The world needs you because no one else carries your exact combination of experiences, perspectives, talents, wounds, and wisdom. No one else sees the world through your eyes. No one else survived your struggles or learned your lessons. Your uniqueness is not random, it is purposeful. When you hide your real self, the world loses something irreplaceable. Your voice, your creativity, your perspective, your light. But when you show up fully, you contribute in a way no one else can. You bring something original to every room, every project, every conversation. Being real also inspires others to be real. When you stop pretending, others stop pretending too. When you speak truthfully, others feel safe to do the same. When you show your authentic self, you encourage authenticity in others, and this creates a ripple effect that spreads far beyond you. It builds communities, strengthens relationships, and shapes environments where honesty is valued and vulnerability is welcomed. The world needs the real you because the real you has the power to touch hearts, change lives, and make impact in ways perfection never could.